council work session. This evening, we're going to be looking at the fiscal year 2018-2019 comprehensive annual financial report, and then also look at the current, the fiscal year 2020 current year budget to actual presentation. And so I'll call on Jennifer to come and kind of start us out, and we'll have our auditor, Tanya's here, and we'll have a discussion. So go ahead, Jennifer.
Customarily, should I stay here, or would you like?
Might be easier to hear from.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Is that better? Yeah, much better. Okay. I'm Jennifer Cuellar. I'm the finance director here at the City of McMinnville, and I have with me Tanya Moffett from Marina and Company, who has been the city's auditors for the past 4 cycles, I think, something like that. And so Tanya's here to give you a rundown on how the process worked, both with the city's audited financial statements, that process, as well as for the Urban Renewal District. And we can also talk a little bit about the plan of action if anybody has questions from 2 weeks ago about what that's all about and what we're doing. So that's kind of what we're up to.
Great. So Tanya, come up, and just to reiterate that the audit committee had an opportunity to meet and receive the report, and we spent probably a good hour going over the report and diving into that. And so Tanya will have an opportunity to present the findings of the audit to you. She's prepared to answer your questions. So welcome. As normal, you spend some time here in the finance department, and you have your team working, but it's good to have you before the council, so welcome.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor and City Council members, I'm happy to be here to present the June 30, 2019 City of McMinnville's Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And I'm happy to report that the city received the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report Award. This is an award program from the Government Finance Officers Association. So the city applies for that award on an annual basis, and the city received it for the June 30, 2018 financial statements, and we anticipate the city will also receive it for the June 30, 2019 financial statements. I like to point that out because it is something that the city is doing and going above and beyond what is the annual requirements for a municipal financial statement. So for example, in the financial statement, there is a statistical section which has 10 years worth of historical data for the city, which is a great place to be able to look to see the trends of the city. I will caution you, the Government Accounting Standards Board, who sets all the standards and what you have to do in the financial statements, has been a little bit crazy in the last 10 years. So you may see some NAs or some zeros in some places. It's probably just because there's been an accounting change, not necessarily that there really wasn't a number there. It's just there's a new way of looking at it. But our audit was a unmodified or a clean opinion. That is the highest level of a financial statement opinion that we're allowed to give on a financial statements, as well as for the McMinnville Urban Renewal Agency. It also is a clean or an unmodified opinion for them as well. I'd also like to point out that the Oregon State Legislature asks Oregon municipal auditors to look at some very specific things. So there's an extra report in the financial statements for Oregon minimum standards. Some of those items are not necessarily financial related. So for example, ORS 279, which is public purchasing, the city, we look at to see that the city is contracting appropriately. So if you're going out for bid for a project, we look to ensure that that's been publicized so that everybody has has an equal opportunity to be able to bid on that project. And then those that bid, we look to see that the selection process is fair. So we look at some things that are not necessarily just financial related when we look at these audits. I'm happy to report that we had clean opinion. We only had one finding for the city, and that was for the not the Urban Renewal Agency. It was for the city's financial statements, and it was the Airport Maintenance Fund. It had a deficit fund balance of $33,000, and that was due to a timing difference. So spending the money prior to receiving the funding. That's common to happen in those types of funds. So that was the only finding that we had for the minimum standards. We also had one other finding, and that was a material weakness, and that came about due to the basically change in management team with the city. So the finding that we had was internal controls related to proper review of year-end worksheets were not being followed. Internal controls help prevent and detect and correct misstatements in a timely manner. The city has come up with an action plan, which you guys heard a couple of weeks ago, and we believe that the action plan is appropriate based off of the time frame and based off of the findings. So the city is working on a process of turning this into a more automated process where it is not as much manual inputs into like an Excel document. So we anticipate that that finding will not be there for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2020. But we did want to point that out, that we did have a finding there. We did not have any findings on the minimum standards report for the Urban Renewal Agency. So it was a clean opinion, and there were no findings in this report as well. So overall, it was a great audit. We had a great experience coming out here. We love working for you. We work for you. We don't work for city management. Sorry, Jeff. Sorry, Jennifer. We work for you, and we work for the citizens. And so we really appreciate being able to come out here and have full access to anybody. We sometimes go to other departments and hang out there too. Not necessarily me, but my teammates. And so it's always nice to get out here and be able to get the work done when we ask for things that we have full access to those things. So any questions or any comments?
Well, the first thing that I'd like to do for the counselors is, the first part of the audit packet has the City of McMinnville's management discussion and analysis. And that's probably the document or the part that you're going to want to read, because that's kind of in user-friendly terms where we've been and where we're going, and gives you some relevant information, much like the budget document where Jeff, as a city manager, gives his budget message. This is the discussion on the financials. And so I would suggest that that might be an area that definitely you would read. That's page 15, and it goes all the way to 30. So about 15 pages there that can really update you as to the findings and where we've been and where we're going. But I will open it up for any questions that you might have as it relates to financials. I know there's probably a few things that you're going to want to ask, but go ahead and we'll just open it up for questions. I may ask a few questions
That's fine.
just because I know we prepared for this. Okay. On page 41, it talks to us a little bit about that question that I think you ask every year. How well did we do to our budget in this fiscal year? What is our percentage of expenditures to revenue? And so Jennifer or Tanya, if you'd like to address that, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised Marcia shared that with us before she left, but I thought that might be appropriate to bring back up.
Well, so it's taking numbers from a couple of different pages. So on 41, the total expenditures are 22.3 million there on page 41. And then if you go to,
It's also on this page too.
is it the same?
It's right here.
Okay, the fund balance, that's 8.6 million. So the proportion there is 38%. So that exceeds the target reserve that we have at the city. I believe it's 25% we like to have in reserve funds.
And last year's discussion talked to us that we might dip down to 20 to 17%. So again, great news. And a part of that, as you read the management letter, deals with the tax, the property value, getting more revenue out of that, and then not spending as much as we had anticipated in some of the expense categories. But again, let's round it off. 38% is, I think, something that as a council, we need to let staff know how pleased we are. We know that as we're going into this next fiscal year and as they're preparing the budget, we're going to be much tighter. Lots of things going on, but that was good news. Sal, did you have a question?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I was just trying to confirm.
Any other questions? There's another area that we talked a little bit about. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mayor. The packet that we got for this meeting was 10 pages, so I was a little confused by Kelly's comment about page 41 in the
Oh,
packet.
I'm sorry. I thought you had a copy of the audit report.
Not in the email that went out,
Oh, my apologies.
so none of us have seen that.
And those are going to be available, aren't they, for counselors that would like?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, there weren't that many printed copies. There was a link and
The link was 10 pages and it
Yeah.
was not with that material in it.
Right.
It was just notes from previous meetings. That's why, I know, so that's why we don't have a lot of questions, because we
Right,
didn't get the material. So,
Okay.
that's okay though. I mean, thank you for the presentation. We'll definitely read it. If-
yeah, it's posted on the website. So that was the
Okay.
link that, sorry.
Should have gone there. That's okay. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll definitely go in and read it. And great news about the reserve. That's amazing.
Just to be clear, though, the audit agenda packet, which is posted on the website for 3/10/21, is 10 pages. Now, are you referring to the main meeting packet, which is much longer?
No, it wasn't in the main meeting.
Yeah, I'm,
We'll follow up with.
Yeah, we'll
Claudia
follow up
and
later.
make sure that we get the material that we can read.
okay.
Fine.
Yeah, I'm sure we can get a hard copy for those that would like to have a hard copy.
Digital's fine.
Yeah, digital's fine, just the
Yeah.
correct
Okay.
document.
Okay. And then the other piece I think that would be of interest to the council, and we talked about, was our PERS liability and how much of our current revenues are going towards PERS. And there's a good discussion in the book that we went over as an audit committee that I think might be appropriate just to discuss, because I know that that's an area that's an increasing portion of taking our revenue, and we've seen an increase every year. So whoever would like to address the PERS liability.
So one of the things I like to look at is on page 95. So it has the schedule of required contributions, and it shows at the top of the schedule the statutory required contributions, which is 2.7 million, and then the contributions in relationship to the statutory required contributions of 2.7. Theoretically, that number is always adjusted when the Oregon State PERS comes out on an annual basis and says this is the amount that you need to be paying in actually it's a biannual basis. They come out and say, this is the amount that you need to be paying in for your PERS employees. And then it also shows the covered payroll of the 14.3%. So as long as the city is making those required contributions, then they theoretically are covering the large pension liability that the city has. But you can see over in the right-hand column of this schedule that the contributions as a percentage of covered payroll has been increasing over the last 6 years. So in 2014, it was only 14.8%, and then it's increased up to 18.6. So that's something to just be aware of. But theoretically, you'll cover that pension liability that's on the face of the financial statements. It's really hard because there's such a large number on the government-wide financial statements that's an estimate, which is that pension liability. Luckily, the city is not actually coming up with that calculation. The state actuary is coming up with that number. So it's based on actuary science, life tables, things like that. But that number is all an estimate. We don't know exactly what that liability is going to be in the future. But as long as the city's making those required annual contributions, theoretically, they're covering that payroll liability.
What's the future look like, or where's the ceiling at on that number as far as when are we going to hit the peak and start tailoring back down?
That we don't know. There's been a lot of speculation out of Oregon State PERS where that's going to hit. At this point, we're not sure because it all depends on what the interest rates are as well as what the total liability is. So
It's just until the curve gets beyond where the PERS, Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees are still drawing pensions, which is, decades still in the future.
20, 30 years out.
Yeah. So it's, we still have to be paying in not only for current employees, but for the workforce that's retired. So that's part of what's holding it so high.
And do they look at that to go at a more accelerated rate than it already is? Like, are we going to start jumping 2 or 3 percentage points a year?
And that's what the estimates have been, that for the next couple or 3 biennia, likely we will be looking at pretty significant increases. There is one thing that we'll discuss as part of the budget process, which we propose to participate with the employer's incentive fund, where the state kicks in 25 cents on every dollar that we do, and that will, it's projected to save the city over 20 years, over $2 million in PERS, but again, those are projections based on long-term estimates, and how well the stock market is doing has such a great impact on what rate calculations are. So we all know there's been a lot of volatility recently, so there may be some difficult years ahead.
Thank you.
So any further questions at this time?
I guess my only other question would be if, as we read through this, are we welcome to email you questions? And
yeah, so I did give each of you one of my business cards. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Jennifer as well. We're both willing to answer any questions that you have on the financial statements. Or even internal controls, the audit process, whatever it may be, feel free to reach out.
thank you.
Yeah, we want to be a resource.
Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just in partial answer to the question, on one of the PERS reports that was published in December of 19, the unfunded actuarial liability statewide is actually kind of at a peak right now, and the state projects sort of a gentle decline between from a number that's about $27 billion, right? It's not.
More, I was going to say it's more than $1 million.
$27 billion down to about $8 billion at the year end of 2037.
comforting.
If council members are interested, I can email, from the work that I did on PERS last year, the projections that they have for the city. And it's, as Jeff said, it's not great through 2037 for us.
But Sal, yeah, that would be great. I think
yeah.
we could just put that in our file and have that, because I know you did some real important work on that. I think there's one other piece that I want to share, and that's on the McMinnville Urban Renewal Agency. In 2019, we saw total revenues of $268,703, and we had total expenditures of $326,520. So we overspent the amount that we had budgeted by about $57,000, but in 2018 we had 90,000 additional. So again, those are timing issues that we're looking at per se, as we see opportunities with MURAC, and Wendy, you've been in on those discussions, and Kelly's been in on those discussions, but it gives you kind of a sense of where we are from that perspective. Okay.
All right.
Now we don't have the sun in our eyes.
It's just
There are
wonderful.
people here.
I feel like I was under a heavy spotlight.
So, again, if there's no further questions, I will adjourn the Joint Urban Renewal Agency and the City Council work session, and we'll have a little time before we start our council meeting at 7 o'clock.
There's also a link on the Secretary of State's website that we can.
No, I'm going to